Hello everyone, welcome to this presentation. My name is Stacey Ann. I was privileged to interview the CEO and owner of the social services organization where I am currently employed. For privacy purposes, I named him John. So John is 67 years old. He was born and raised in Nigeria, but migrated to the United States in his adolescent years. John stated that he always had a strong family background, and besides his parents, his grandmother was very supportive of him, both financially and otherwise. John stated that even though he was born and raised in a third world country where many people had it difficult to afford the basic things in life, he considered himself very privileged to have a strong family background. John said that his maternal grandmother is the driving force behind his success because she ensured he had everything he needed and more. According to John, he did not recall most of the early developmental stages in his life. However, he recalled quite a lot about his adolescent years, which is why I will focus on Erikson's stage of development: identity versus role confusion. According to Erik Erikson, this is the fifth stage of the psychosocial development. This stage occurs during the adolescent years, which is approximately between the ages of 12 and 18 years of age. During these years or stage is when adolescents explore their independence and develop a sense of self and personal identity. John explained that one of his experiences during this stage was the fascination of becoming a police officer because he liked their uniform and the sound of the sirens. It was during these times that he also felt the potential to grow and, on the other hand, the potential of failure. The idea of becoming a police officer in his culture was somewhat unacceptable because this was considered a low-level job, and his family wanted him to become a doctor. John stated that this stage was quite a struggle for him because he was caught between what he wanted to do versus what his parents' expectations were for him. The struggle John described was overwhelming. According to Erikson, the conflict of this stage is the identity or role confusion, which he describes as a deep sense of conflict, indecisiveness, loneliness, and anxiety. As a result, John stated that he was uncertain of who he was or what his role in society should be. John stated that it was also the same period that he was given the opportunity to travel to the United States to further his education. This is the stage where he stated that he spent most of his time trying to develop a sense of self and a feeling of independence and control. Like Freud, Erikson maintained that ego identity is the conscious sense of self that we develop through social interactions, which become a central focus during the identity versus role confusion of psychosocial development. John discussed during this stage when he first migrated from Nigeria to the United States and the difficulties that he encountered. John explained how he was living with family for the first 2 months when he arrived, but was told after those 2 months that he had to find his own place because their house was sold and he could not move with them. John said he became so confused because he had nowhere to go, so he started helping out at a mechanic shop where the owner offered him his garage to sleep and told him to hurry up and get on his feet. John explained that within 4 months, he was able to work and save enough money to rent an apartment. He said within 6 months after that, he enrolled into school, and that's where he experienced more struggles. of adjusting to education in the American system. John said the language barrier was a major setback for him. For example, he discussed being picked on by some of his classmates because of his accent and the notion that people had about the African culture. He also explained that it affected his grades in college with classes that required him to do presentations. During this stage, John explained that even though he had the financial and emotional support from his family back home, life wasn't the same. Trying to adjust to a new culture and a new way of life was difficult for him. He, however, stated that he was not going to allow anything to deter him from what his main focus was, and that was to acquire the highest level of education and obtain his PhD. John said that the foundation was set from a very young age, and many children within the African culture strive to meet their family's expectations. John also stated that his upbringing motivated him to strive and make something of himself. Erickson stated that during the adolescent years, children who receive the proper encouragement and reinforcement through personal exploration will emerge from the stage with a strong sense of self and feeling of independence and control. On the other hand, those who remain unsure of their belief and desires will feel insecure and confused about themselves and the future. One of the psychosocial crises that John explained experiencing during his adolescent years was also the death of his father. He also explained that he had to move back and forth from his house to his grandmother's house to help her out. When he moved to the United States, he also explained becoming homeless a short period after he came here. John also stated that from the time he was born, the foundation was laid, and his culture was very strict about the importance of education and achieving success. He had the support of his family at all times, and that's how he was able to overcome a lot of his struggles. Even though he had the support of family, after his father's death, he explained that he realized that there was no more time for pampering, but it was now time for him to step in and pick up the slacks where his dad left off. Some of the issues that John explained experiencing as it relates to diversity and differences, it was adjusting to a new culture and environment was a major struggle for him, especially in the education system. John said he did not allow that to distract him from accomplishing his goals. He joined the student government in his school, and that helped him to gain a lot of exposure and relate to people from many different ethnicities and cultural backgrounds like himself, who struggled with the same differences like him. Some of the psychosocial factors in the crisis resolution stage that I will discuss, relating back to the key concept in the system theory, John mentioned that the death of his father was an example of reciprocity, where this change impacted other parts of his system, where he had to assume a new role of assisting his mother due to his father's death. His mother and his grandmother, He reported that he had the ongoing support of family, and he lived in the village where everyone in the community would look out for each other. Also, He said his upbringing was a very comfortable one, and he really cannot recall many psychosocial crises. From a system theory perspective, John describes some of the struggles he encountered in the American system and how his peers in the school system and people would react to his accent. John, however, stated that he did not allow that to deter him from achieving his goals. He said it actually motivated him more. John also stated that he knew that adapting to different systems can change one's behavior and attitude, but coming from a strong cultural background, that kept him focused. Some of the limitations that I observed between Freud's theory of psychosexual development versus Erikson's theory of psychosocial development. Freud was a clinician and a leader in psychoanalytic theory, which he described as the id, ego, and superego. He also had 5 stages of psychosexual development. Freud believed in each stage as a person must resolve a conflict to move on to the next stage. Whereas in Erikson's theory, he places most of his focus on ego identity, which he believes was a conscious sense of self, which we develop through social interaction and become a central focus during the identity versus role confusion stage. In my opinion, I believe that there are limitations in Erikson's theory versus Freud, because his emphasis was focused only on one aspect and argued that he moved through each stage in a consistent manner, whereas Freud looked at these stages from many different perspectives and based most of his ideas from the experiences he had with his patients. Please see references as follows. Thank you so much, and I look forward to listening to my other classmates and learning something from each presentation. Thank you.